My name is Melanie Brooks. I'm 30 years old, living and working in San Diego as an architect. I always thought my wedding day would be the happiest day of my life. But no one ever teaches you how to stay standing when your own father walks away from you just moments before the most sacred moment of your life. On my wedding day, as I was getting ready to walk down the aisle, my father, the man who once promised he'd lead me there, suddenly pulled out his phone, stared at the screen for a few seconds, and then coldly turned his back and walked away. No explanation. No goodbye. I stood there, frozen, under the lights in the eyes of nearly 100 guests. No one dared to approach me. No one said a word. And in that very moment, someone no one expected stepped out from the front row, reached out their hand toward me, and the entire room stood up, clapping. Have you ever been hurt by someone you loved in the very moment they were supposed to be by your side? Have you ever wondered what blood ties mean if the people who share them with you choose to turn their backs when you need them most? Leave a comment if you've ever experienced the pain of being left behind like I did. Hit like if you believe that family isn't just about the people who gave you life, but those who choose to stay. And don't forget to follow this channel to hear the rest of my story. Because the reason my father walked away wasn't some unfortunate accident. It was a message from my sister. And it was only the beginning of a truth I had spent my whole life avoiding. I was born and raised in a small suburban town in Oregon. Our white two-story wooden house sat at the end of a maple-lined street, with a garden my mom tended to by hand. She planted lavender along the fence while my dad, an English literature professor at the local university, would sit on the porch reading until the sun went down. My childhood used to be peaceful like that. Evenings by the fireplace, mom baking apple pies, dad telling us fairy tales, and me and my sister, Lena, putting together puzzles on the rug. I learned how to draw from my mom. Lena loved music and would hum little tunes while playing in the backyard. My mother was gentle, thoughtful, always noticing the smallest expressions between us. She once told me when I was just 8, "Melanie, you think more deeply than most your age. But remember, being strong doesn't mean staying silent." I had no idea that advice would become the only thing keeping me grounded later on. Everything changed during the winter when I turned 15. Mom started saying she felt tired, then developed a persistent cough. At first, Dad thought it was just a cold, but after weeks passed with no improvement, we took her to the hospital. A few days later, the doctor gave us the devastating news: late-stage pancreatic cancer. I remember the day we left the clinic. Snow was gently falling onto Mom's coat. She squeezed my hand tightly, her face smiling but her eyes distant. I didn't fully understand what the diagnosis meant. I only knew something inside me had just collapsed. The next 6 months were nothing but pain. Chemotherapy weakened her day by day. Her hair fell out. Her skin grew pale. I spent every afternoon after school taking care of her, learning how to make chicken soup, changing towels, reading books aloud to her. Lena was only 12, scared and distant. She hid in her room with headphones or clung to Dad constantly. When Mom passed, none of us really cried. The funeral was small, just like she wanted, in our backyard on a rainy afternoon. I sat in the front row, clutching her scarf, while Lena held onto Dad's arm, eyes red but dry. I don't know when my father started to change. Maybe it was the day she died. Maybe even earlier. He drowned himself in work, took on extra night classes, came home after I was asleep, and left before the sun rose. Dinner was just me and Lena. I tried to keep up Mom's cooking routines, but Lena complained about everything I made. "You don't need to pretend to be Mom," she blurted out once. I didn't blame her. She was still a child. But that sentence felt like a knife. I never wanted to replace Mom. I was just trying to keep the pieces of our family from falling apart. As time passed, Lena became the center of Dad's world. He started taking her to music classes, buying her things he once called unnecessary. In the few remaining family moments we had, Lena sat beside him chatting about school while I got a couple of questions about grades and college plans. When I asked if we could go hiking together over spring break, Dad said, "I think Lena needs the break more than you." I got good grades, stayed out of trouble, didn't date early, didn't cause drama. I thought that meant Dad would trust me. But no. In his eyes, I was distant, too serious, always overthinking. Lena was different. She knew how to make him laugh, how to appear vulnerable, when to act affectionate. Anytime she was upset, he canceled his lectures to be with her. When I failed a physics exam and cried alone in my room, he sent a one-line text, "Handle it yourself." You're grown now. One night, I stayed up late working on an art project. I fell asleep around 3 a.m. When I woke up, the drawing was gone. I found it crumpled in the trash can outside. Lena just said casually, "Must have been the wind." I wanted to believe her. But inside me, a seed of doubt had started to grow. Throughout high school, I kept my grades up, earned a full scholarship to UC Berkeley. When I got the acceptance letter, I ran into the living room excited to show Dad. He barely looked up from the papers he was grading. "Congrats," he muttered. "Lena's preparing for her piano recital next week. Keep it down." I don't remember how I folded that letter and hid it away. I just remember that from then on, I stopped expecting love from him. Once I overheard Lena talking to Dad in his office. "She doesn't want to come home for the holidays, Dad," she said convincingly. "She said she's staying to work. Besides, she's not really close with anyone here." So that's why Dad started to pull away. Not because he hated me, but because Lena made sure he believed I didn't need him anymore. I could handle the distance. But what I couldn't forgive was the deliberate, repeated, silent deception. Even now, when I look back at those years, I still wonder. If Mom had lived, would things have been different? Did I lose my father at 15, even though he still lived under the same roof? I don't know. What I do know is the woman who walked down the aisle in a wedding gown that day was once a little girl who quietly washed empty lunchboxes no one noticed. A teenager who waited for her father to show up at graduation, only to stare at an empty chair. A young woman who believed that if she just tried a little harder, he'd finally see her. But sometimes, no matter how hard you try, some eyes were never meant to see you. I left Oregon in the fall of my 18th year. As the plane took off from Portland, I thought, finally I'm free. Free from that cold house where Mom's paintings had been taken down and replaced by Lena's graduation photos. Free from lonely dinners when Dad didn't make it home, and when he did, only asked what Lena had eaten, studied, or felt. I used to hope distance would help him see me more clearly. But turns out it only helped him hear Lena more clearly. 3 months into college, Dad sent me an email saying Lena had just passed the state music exam, followed by a line at the bottom. "If you have time, give her a call. She misses you." I called. But Lena didn't pick up. 2 weeks later, I accidentally received a forwarded email from one of my professors. A thank you note from Dad to the scholarship committee saying, "My youngest daughter will be the third violinist in the State Youth Symphony. She's my greatest pride." I wasn't jealous of Lena's achievements. But in that moment, I felt completely invisible. I still tried to stay in touch. Sent Christmas cards, texted Lena on her birthdays, even called during the holidays. But most of the time it was met with silence. Occasionally, Dad would reply with a few lines, "Lena's busy practicing," or "she'll call after her exam." And then, no one ever called. Until one day after my sophomore year ended, I went back home for a visit after more than a year away. Lena had grown up, her hair lightly curled, dressed fashionably, her eyes glancing over me like we were mere acquaintances. Dad looked surprised to see me actually standing at the doorstep. "You really came back?" he asked, still wearing that old sweater with worn sleeves. I smiled, keeping it light. "I texted you ahead of time." He nodded and glanced at Lena as if to confirm. My sister shrugged and said casually, "I thought she changed her mind. Last time she said she didn't care for family holidays." I turned to her, asking gently, "When did I ever say that?" Lena gave a faint smirk. "You don't remember? That night you said you had to work late. You texted saying family celebrations are just for show." I was speechless. I had never written anything like that. But Dad looked at me, then sighed. "Let it go. What matters is that you're here now." That evening, during the dinner I cooked myself, the same beef stew Mom once taught me, I tried to talk about school, about the architecture project I had just been chosen to lead. Dad nodded, barely interested. Then suddenly Lena cut in. "Dad, did you know her boyfriend designs stage lighting? They met online. Sounds a little rushed, huh?" I hadn't even reacted yet when Dad frowned. "You already have a boyfriend? Why didn't you tell me sooner? Meeting someone online is a little concerning." I was stunned. I had never told Lena anything about my love life. I wasn't even seeing anyone at the time. But to Dad, I was already impulsive, secretive, untrustworthy. I looked at Lena. Her gaze met mine as if she had only accidentally slipped up. But I knew. She knew exactly what she was doing. The year I graduated, I sent out invitations to Dad and Lena a month in advance. It had all the details: the time of the ceremony, the location, and a note. "I hope you can come, Dad. This is a major milestone in my life." I waited. On the day of the ceremony, surrounded by the massive crowd of students, I turned around, searching. The audience seats gradually filled, but the one I had saved remained cold and empty. After the ceremony, I received a single text from Dad. "Sorry, Lena needed a ride to her regional competition. You'll understand." I didn't respond. But weeks later, I called Lena directly and asked, "Did you really have a competition that day?" Lena let out a soft laugh. "You think I made that up?" I stayed silent. She continued, her voice barely above a whisper. "Even if I didn't, at least I did what you could never do: make Dad feel needed." That sentence was a blade. Not because of how cruel it was, but because it was true. Dad needed to feel important. And Lena always knew how to make him believe he was. Later, when I suggested going on a summer trip with Dad, just the two of us, to try and mend what was broken, Lena told him I was only trying to run away from a failed relationship. She made up a story that I'd broken up with someone, that I wasn't okay, and wanted to drag Dad along for comfort. Dad shut it down immediately. "You need to learn how to heal yourself, Melanie. I can't be your crutch forever." I didn't understand what I had done so wrong that everything I said was always doubted, while everything Lena made up was believed without question. Was it because I didn't cry on cue? Didn't pout or act fragile the way Lena always did? Or maybe, because he never truly wanted to see me? I tried. For years I didn't give up, didn't let go of the idea of family. But every effort only pushed me further away. And eventually, I stopped explaining. I stopped defending myself. I began writing a new chapter of my life, with no place for them in it. But I didn't know then that one day the very person who once turned their back on me would be forced to face the truth they had clung to so blindly. And when that truth came, it didn't arrive in silence. It came with the sound of an entire wedding hall erupting in applause. I moved to San Diego the summer I turned 24, carrying a degree in architecture from UC Berkeley, an old suitcase, and a heart that no longer expected anything from blood relatives. My first job was at a small urban design firm, on the third floor of a glass building overlooking the bay. I didn't know what the future would hold. But I knew I needed a fresh start, in a place far away where no one called me too cold, too logical. We met at a City Architecture Association's interior design exhibit. I had gone with some coworkers, planning to just observe quietly like I always did. But at one of the model booths for an eco-friendly neighborhood, I saw a man enthusiastically explaining the concept to a group of students. He wore a light blue shirt, sleeves rolled up, sun-kissed skin, and a calm smile. Tyler Anderson. He didn't leave a strong impression at first, except for the way he spoke. Clear, unpretentious, yet impossible to ignore. I'm not easily drawn to people. But that day, when Tyler looked at me and asked, "What's your take on green spaces in dense residential areas?" I ended up talking so much even I was surprised. We ran into each other again a week later at a public space redevelopment seminar. He walked right up and greeted me, then asked if I'd like to grab coffee. The conversation lasted 3 hours. I remember at the end Tyler smiled and said, "If cities need spaces for people to breathe, then each person probably needs someone they can exhale with." After that, we met most weekends, sketching at a small cafe by the beach, debating sustainable structures, strolling through parks, observing how seniors walked, how kids played. Tyler didn't ask about my family at first. He just listened when I shared, never interrupting or offering unsolicited advice. That's what made me feel safe. When I told him my mom died when I was 15, that my dad slowly disappeared even while living under the same roof, Tyler just held my hand and said, "You don't need to say more. I'll be here when you're ready." Loving Tyler didn't feel like fireworks. It felt like a breeze, steady as stone, warm like late afternoon sun. He didn't make grand promises. He just showed up when it mattered. When I had a high fever from overworking, Tyler drove more than 40 minutes from his construction site, brought a paper bag with chicken soup and orange juice, stayed until I fell asleep, then quietly washed the dishes. When I woke up, I found a note he'd left. "I know you're good at taking care of yourself, but even strong people deserve care." Tyler lived with his parents in the suburbs, in a pitched roof house with a backyard full of heirloom roses. His family wasn't wealthy, but their home was full of laughter and grace. His mom, Evelyn, a retired middle school teacher, had gentle eyes and noticed every little detail. His dad, Russell, loved gardening and was obsessed with American history books. They welcomed me like one of their own from the very first visit. Evelyn would often text me to ask if I was eating well or getting enough sleep. Russell gave me a tour of the backyard greenhouse, talking about each plant like they were old friends. And then I met Uncle Dean. Dean was Evelyn's younger brother. He had served in the military and was now retired. He lived alone, quietly, in a small apartment near the coast. He didn't talk much, didn't interfere, but every time he showed up, it was at just the right moment. "You must be Melanie, right?" he asked me the first evening I came over for dinner. "Do you eat lasagna with cheese? Evelyn said you don't like anything too rich." I was surprised he remembered something that small. Dean gave a gentle smile. "When you live alone, you learn to observe. So you don't trouble others." From then on, I grew close to Dean in a way I didn't expect. He often sent me articles about military architecture or excerpts from old books with notes in the margin. "This page reminded me of how you talked about light and structure in that shopping complex." Whenever I had a new publication or was invited to speak at a seminar, Dean was always the first to send a congratulatory email. Sometimes just 3 words: "So proud of you." No one had said that to me since my mother passed away. Little by little, I didn't just find love in Tyler. I found a family not perfect but sincere. They didn't need me to be charming or strong. They didn't measure me against anyone else. They just listened. They just stayed. My heart felt still enough to believe I was worthy of being loved. I never told Dean that he reminded me of my mother. In the way he noticed the little things, his patience, his soft gaze like late afternoon sun. But maybe he knew. People who felt loneliness usually recognize each other without saying much. 4 years with Tyler passed like a road I never imagined I'd get to walk. We grew together through sketches, house renovations, approved proposals, and late-night noodles eaten in the office. One Sunday afternoon, we visited the eco park just outside the city, the one we had helped redesign. The sky was clear, the grass swaying in the breeze. Tyler asked me to stand in the middle of a small fountain, right at the spot where we once argued about the layout of the paving stones. He looked at me, eyes steady and kind, just like the first time we met. "Melanie," he said, "if we could argue about a tile and still keep going, then I think we can build a whole life together." Before I could respond, he got down on one knee and pulled a small velvet box from his pocket. The ring was simple, etched with a spiral, mimicking the classic staircase design I'd once said was my favorite. I laughed. Tears slipped out without me noticing. And I nodded. Tyler didn't promise eternal happiness. He just said, "I won't walk away when you need someone to stay." That was the most precious vow anyone could give me. That night, once I'd calmed down, I called my father. I stood in the kitchen, hands still trembling. The call connected after a few rings. His voice was raspy and slow as always. "Hello. It's me, Dad." I took a deep breath. "I wanted to tell you something." "Okay, what's going on?" "Tyler proposed today." And I said yes. There was a pause, long enough for me to hear my own heartbeat. Then he exhaled softly. "Is that so? Congratulations." His voice was different, not the polite tone he used whenever I shared something important he didn't really care about. This time there was something caught in his throat. "I'm really happy for you. Tyler's a good man. If your mother were here, she'd be so proud." It was the first time in years he had mentioned her. I gripped the edge of the table, holding back my tears. I hope so." After a few more polite questions about the wedding date, the guest list, and the venue, I finally gathered the courage and said, "That I want to ask you something." "Yeah. I'd like for you to walk me down the aisle." The other end of the line went completely silent. I started to worry I had asked too much. But then I heard him inhale, slow and deep. "Melanie, if that's what you want." My heart stopped. I clutched the phone tighter, my lips trembling. Really, I'll do it. It's something I should have promised a long time ago." His voice wasn't loud, but it carried weight. And I didn't see my father as just a shadow behind someone else. We talked a bit more about logistics. Right before we ended the call, he said quietly, "Thank you for asking me. Not everyone is big-hearted enough to still want that." I sat alone for a long time afterward, staring at the ring on my hand, feeling like I had just peeled off a hard shell that had wrapped around my heart for so many years. The next day I told Tyler. He smiled and gently squeezed my hand. I'm glad you had that moment with him. Even if it came late, it still matters. Tyler suggested we start planning early so Dad could make time and prepare emotionally. We chose an old seaside hotel with a garden full of lavender, my mother's favorite flower. It was also the place where Tyler had once promised he would never leave when I needed someone to stay. I wrote my dad a handwritten letter. I included a sketch of the seating chart, with his name marked Father of the Bride. A week later he texted, "Got your letter. It's beautiful. Thank you." Not much. No flowery words. But to me it was a huge step. I called Lena even though I knew I didn't have to. I couldn't cut her out completely. Some part of me still hoped. "Did you hear the news?" I asked. "What news?" Her voice was flat. "I'm getting married." Pause. Then a soft laugh. "Ah, so Tyler finally decided he can put up with you forever?" I swallowed the lump in my throat. "Dad's walking me down the aisle." Silence again. Then Lena said slowly, "So you still need Dad? Or maybe you just need someone to hold your hand?" I didn't answer. Because I wasn't sure she wanted to hear it. I only knew that in that moment deep inside there was still a faint light. That maybe the person who once turned away might be trying to come back. And no matter how grown up I was, I still needed him to truly see me just once. One early morning in April, while I was sitting with Tyler and his mom at a small bakery near the wedding garden discussing table settings, my phone buzzed. The name on the screen, Lena. I hesitated for a moment before answering. Her voice came through as if we just chatted like old friends yesterday. "Mel, I have some exciting news." I didn't reply right away. Lena continued in her usual bubbly tone. "I just got promoted to head of partner relations at my new company. I'm throwing a tech gala to celebrate. It's scheduled for mid-June." I nodded, eyes still watching Tyler and his mom discuss flower arrangements. "That's great. So, what's the exact date?" She paused. The 15th. I froze. My chopsticks slipped from my hand onto the table without me even realizing. "What did you say?" "The 15th. But don't worry, the gala's at noon. Your wedding's in the evening, right?" I already checked with the event coordinator. They said timing should be fine. I took a deep breath. "Lena, you know my wedding date was set 8 months ago." "Come on," she laughed. "I didn't remember the invite exactly. Besides, the company picked the date, I didn't have a say. I thought you'd be happy for me." I didn't say anything else. But a chill ran down my spine. It wasn't just the date. It was the way she said it. Casual, light yet calculated. Just like always. That afternoon I called Dad. He picked up right away. I spoke slowly. "Did you know Lena's gala is on June 15th? "Yeah, she mentioned it. Unfortunate timing, but hers is during the day and yours is in the evening. I think I can make both. Don't you think that's a little strange? I sent invites 8 months ago." She confirmed she'd come. "And now the event is just 3 blocks from the wedding venue." His voice softened. "Lena said the company chose the date. I think you should be understanding. Both events are important." I bit my lip, my chest tightening. It wasn't about Lena. It was about how Dad still hadn't changed. Still believing smooth explanations, still choosing peace over standing up. "So you're planning to attend both?" I asked directly. "I'll try. The gala starts at 11. I might be a bit late, but I'll still walk you down the aisle." I didn't answer right away. Each word felt like another step backward, another brick in the wall between us. After the call, I sat alone in Tyler's small kitchen, sunlight spilling through the window onto the table crowded with wedding paperwork. I flipped through the ceremony layout again, reread the confirmations from the planner, the videographers, the band. Everything was on track. Yet a single decision from my sister managed to cast a shadow on it all. That night I told Tyler. He stayed quiet for a while. "Do you think she did this on purpose?" I looked him in the eyes. "I won't say for sure. But Lena never does anything accidentally." He nodded, then gently took my hand. "If things aren't clearer closer to the wedding, I think we need to prepare ourselves emotionally." I gripped his hand tighter. "I'm not afraid of being short on guests. I just hurt because it could have been simple. Family," he sighed. "But you have me. You have Dean. You have the ones who stayed. I rested my head on Tyler's shoulder, feeling the warmth of his chest beneath his shirt. But deep down, one question wouldn't let go. Why, after everything, did Lena still choose that exact date? And why was my dad willing to believe it again? I still remember the scent of lavender on the breeze that afternoon, the kind Mom used to love, now gently wafting through the wedding garden we had spent nearly a year preparing. Everything looked almost perfect. The lace canopy I chose draped over the arch like the soft light of evening. Canon in D played gently from the band tucked into the left corner of the lawn. Friends, colleagues, and both families were already seated. I stood behind the glass doors, holding my pale white bouquet, my dress flowing behind me, heart racing, not from fear but from joy. Then Dad arrived. He stepped quickly into the prep room, still in the gray suit I had suggested months ago. His face looked tense, but I didn't think much of it. Maybe he was nervous. I smiled at him through the mirror. "You ready, Dad?" Before he could answer, his phone buzzed. A single beep echoed through the quiet room. He pulled it out, glanced at the screen, and like something invisible had tugged him, he leaned toward the door. "Melanie." I turned. "What is it, Dad?" "Lena, something happened. She texted, there's an emergency. She needs me right now. I can't stay." I thought I'd misheard. I stared at his face just a few feet from mine. "What did you say?" "I have to go. I'll come back. I should make it in time for the reception. But right now she needs me more." "What about me?" He didn't answer. Just placed his hand on my shoulder, a silent apology, then walked out of the room. Without looking back. I stood frozen. I couldn't speak. It felt like the ground had disappeared beneath me. I heard the assistant outside gently call, "Miss Melanie, it's time." I couldn't move. My eyes blurred, not from tears, but from a crushing emptiness wrapping around my chest. Then a hand lightly touched my elbow. "Uncle Dean." He said nothing. Didn't ask anything. Just looked at me. His eyes weren't frantic or pitying, they were calm. "Steady. You don't have to walk alone." I looked at him, my throat tightening. But that was supposed to be my father's place. No. That's the role of the person who loves you the most, the one willing to walk with you no matter what happens. I couldn't say another word. I placed my hand on his arm, trembling but resolute. The door opened. Music swelled. And as we stepped out, I saw the entire audience rise at once. Some placed their hands over their hearts. Some lifted napkins to their eyes. I didn't know why everyone reacted that way. But I was certain of one thing. It wasn't because Dean was a replacement, but because he dared to step forward at the exact moment I needed him. As he and I walked down the flower-lined aisle, I felt the gentle squeeze of his hand. He said nothing, but it was enough to keep me from collapsing. Near the end, I saw Tyler waiting. He stood beneath the white wooden arch, his gaze full of emotion. And when he saw me, he gave a subtle nod as if he understood everything. Dean paused for a moment before handing my hand to Tyler. He whispered, "You are strong. But strength doesn't mean you have to be alone." Then he placed my hand in Tyler's, bowed his head in blessing, and stepped back to the front row. The ceremony began. But in my heart, one chapter had ended and another had just begun. The wedding reception was warm in the large room lit with soft golden lights, lavender bouquets on the tables blending with the scent of almond pastries and light wine. I smiled as guests congratulated us, held Tyler's hand for the first dance, trying to keep my heart full of joy. Yet deep inside, I could still feel the echo of my father's absent footsteps. He had not yet returned. Around 8 p.m. as guests began the main course, the back door opened. Someone entered, not my father. It was Ethan, my cousin Margaret's son, the only member of my maternal extended family still in touch with both Lena and me. Ethan wasn't in a suit like everyone else, looking a little tired and hurried. He spotted me and quickly approached the bride's table. "Mel, do you have a minute?" I nodded. Tyler released my hand so I could walk with Ethan to a small corner near the hallway. Ethan exhaled, glancing around before speaking quietly. "Sorry I'm late. I just left Lena's place." I froze. "The gala." He shook his head. "There was no gala. You need to know this." He showed me a quick photo on his phone. A small hall with sparsely arranged tables and just over a dozen people laughing and holding plastic cups. No company signage, no speakers, no tech staff. Just a casual social gathering, or more accurately, a staged event. I interned at Lena's place for a few months. I still know some people there. No one knew about this event. I asked one of her colleagues. She said Lena was on personal leave today. I clenched my hands until my nails dug into my palms. But Ethan didn't stop. He opened another message. I found this in a chat Lena sent to Greg. You should see it. I took the phone. The message read clearly. Melanie said Dad is just an obligation. She invited him out of courtesy, doesn't really need him. But you are different. You are the one who truly needs Dad today. I couldn't blink. My chest felt crushed by a heavy weight. My eyes burned, but tears wouldn't come. I read the words over and over, not because I doubted them, but because I was too familiar with Lena twisting the truth to claim affection. Ethan looked at me remorseful. I know I shouldn't interfere. But I couldn't just sit there and let you get hurt anymore. I nodded, grasping his hand. Thank you. At least you came today. When we returned to the reception table, Uncle Dean was talking with Tyler's mom. His eyes met mine as if he'd seen everything that had just happened. I intended to keep everything quiet, but before I could turn away, Dean approached, placing a hand on my shoulder and whispering, "If you allow, I have a few words to say." I looked at him, silent, but my eyes spoke volumes. Dean stepped forward where the band had paused between sets. He signaled for the microphone. Soft stage lights fell on him and the room gradually quieted. His voice was not loud but clear, each word reaching the listeners. I apologize for interrupting the celebration. But I would like to share a few words, not as a representative of the groom's family, but as someone who has stood behind Melanie all this time. All eyes turned toward him. I am not her biological father. I do not replace anyone. But I have witnessed. I have seen clearly who has loved Melanie, who has hurt her, and who is still taking advantage of a father's blind trust. Murmurs rippled below. I stayed seated, neither bowing my head nor looking up. Just sitting straight, as if witnessing the past replay in a single evening. Dean continued, eyes fixed on me. I have stood behind Melanie when she was about to fall. I did not do it for recognition. I did it because I believe no one should walk alone on the most important day of their life. He paused. His voice softened. Some choose to leave for a text message. But others choose to stay just because of a gaze that needs them. The room seemed to freeze. I heard utensils stop clinking, chairs no longer shift. Tyler placed his hand on my back, offering strength. Dean lowered the microphone, returned to his seat, not waiting for applause. But the entire room rose, clapping, long, sincere, without shouting or fanfare. A sound of empathy, agreement, and respect. I glanced at Tyler. He gave me a gentle nod. I felt at peace. Not because my father had arrived, but because someone had truly seen me. Truly seen me. I was standing by the wedding cake table, my fingers brushing the white frosting dusted with lavender, when the large doors at the end of the hall opened. Light from the hallway illuminated a familiar figure. My father entered, his suit slightly wrinkled, tie loose, eyes lost in the room that had long settled. He walked slowly past the rows of tables. No one spoke, but all eyes followed him. Some lowered their heads slightly. Some only looked at me. He reached me as the background music shifted to a soft piano piece. His face was weary, eyes bloodshot, but no longer the rigid expression he usually wore. "I'm sorry, Melanie. I'm late. Lena, Do you want to know what really happened?" I didn't raise my voice. Didn't accuse. Just asked in a calm tone. He froze. "What do you mean?" Ethan, standing nearby with his phone still in hand, stepped forward. I showed everything to Melanie, Uncle Greg. "I'm sorry to be blunt, but Lena staged the entire event today. No promotion, no gala, no company request. Just a fake party, to pull you away from the wedding." My father shook his head slightly as if in disbelief. I pulled from my dress pocket the small paper Ethan had printed, the message Lena sent to him. I handed it to him. His hands trembled lightly as he held the paper. "Melanie said Dad is just an obligation. You are the one who truly needs him today." He read it over and over. His eyes lingered on the italicized line, then shifted to my face. I didn't cry. I wasn't angry. I just stood there, as I had stood alone many times before. "I thought," he whispered, almost inaudible, "I thought you didn't really need me. I held his gaze. Do you remember when I won the statewide literature award? You weren't there. Lena told you I didn't want to make a fuss, that I was shy about the attention. He didn't answer. But I could see his body falter. On my 20th birthday, I emailed you an invite. No one replied. Lena told you were busy teaching. Turns out, you were driving her to her boyfriend's birthday. I paused. The crowd behind us was silent. Tyler's hand was on my back, but he didn't step in. And today Dad left before walking me down the aisle. All because of a single text message. You don't know. She was lying. You thought she was weak and needed support. And me. I looked at him, my gaze calm but sharp enough to cut through excuses. You didn't need anyone to support you, Dad. No matter how strong you are, you're still a daughter who lost her mother at 15. And every time you needed someone to stand beside you, you chose to stand beside someone else. Greg Brooks sank into the chair nearby. He placed his hands over his face, trembling. The first choked sobs escaped after a long pause. I watched him cry as if for the first time seeing this man break. No longer my stoic father, no longer the cold figure walking away, but a father realizing what he had lost. I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. I didn't respond to the apology. I bent down, sitting across from him, gently saying, Forgiveness isn't about you. Forgiveness is about my freedom. He lifted his head, eyes still glistening. I looked deeply into his eyes and continued, I don't know how I'll feel tomorrow. But today, I don't need promises, I don't need explanations. I just need you to understand that hurt doesn't come from a single missed moment. It comes from being overlooked over and over, and still thinking that just showing up is enough. Greg nodded, as if each word I spoke cut through him slowly but decisively. Dean was standing nearby, his gaze non-judgmental. Only quiet empathy from someone who had been through life. My father looked toward him. And perhaps he understood that this man had done what he could not walking me down the aisle, but not leaving when I needed someone the most. After our honeymoon in Monterey, when we returned to San Diego, my voicemail was full of missed calls. The first text came at 3 a.m. I'm sorry. I don't know where to start. The second was the following afternoon. Melanie, if you allow. I want to make things right. I read them all. Didn't delete. But didn't respond immediately. One Saturday morning, sunlight slanted through the kitchen window as I made coffee when my phone lit up with a message from Lena. No greeting. No emotion. Just one line, utterly cold. I thought you'd know how to keep your wedding simple. I wasn't surprised. Nor angry. Just amused. Everything she did was wrapped in a sweet or reasonable facade. But underneath it was the same old script. Claiming attention, manipulating emotions, and blaming others when things didn't go her way. I set the phone down, choosing not to respond. From that moment, I knew I needed one final conversation with my father. Not to reconcile, but to bring closure. As gently as possible for both of us. I arranged to meet him at Southwood Park on a weekday afternoon, the place my mother used to take me when I was little. Whenever something went wrong, a bad test, a misunderstanding with friends, she would walk me along the stone path, stopping beneath the bright red maple, remaining silent until I spoke what I needed to say. That day I arrived first, wearing a light gray coat, sitting on the familiar wooden bench. The breeze carried the scent of freshly cut grass, and a few yellow leaves drifted down like tiny memories from the past. My father arrived about 10 minutes later. He still held the same appearance, striped shirt, worn blazer, eyes searching for something unnamed. You chose this place, he said, looking around, because your mother liked it, right? I nodded. Yes. Because here I used to feel heard. We sat quietly for a while, listening to passing bicycles, distant children laughing. Then I turned to him, my voice calm but firm. You sent many messages. I read them all. He nodded. No excuses. No questions. I invited you here today, I continued, not for forgiveness or reconciliation. I invited you because I don't want things left unfinished, but I also don't want to continue in a half-hearted relationship. His eyes began to glisten. If you want to change, I said slowly, it has to be for yourself. Not out of guilt, not because of me. Because if you do something only to make up for mistakes, one day when you think you've been enough, you'll give up again. I inhaled deeply, then spoke what I had held inside for so long. I am no longer the 15-year-old girl crying alone in her room for being called selfish. I've learned to stand up, to rebuild my life without asking anyone's permission. Family to me is not where you are born, it's the people who stay when everyone else leaves. He lowered his head. I didn't need him to promise anything. I just wanted him to understand. From now on, I said gently, if you want to call, just call. But don't expect me to reach out first. I've done my part for 20 years already. Greg Brooks said nothing immediately. He just sat there, hands lightly clasped, eyes fixed on the tree-lined stone path ahead. Maybe he was listening. Maybe he was regretting. Maybe both. We parted there, no hugs. No tears. But as I walked away, I knew I had reclaimed the most important thing I had ever lost. Peace within myself. I didn't need him to understand me, I just needed to understand myself. A year after the wedding, Tyler and I decided to host a small celebration. Not flashy, not widely invited. Just over 40 people, those who had truly been with us over the past year. His family, a few close friends, some colleagues, and, of course, Dean. The party took place in a hilltop garden in North San Diego, the place Tyler and I had once designed a green project model together. It was an open space with winding wooden paths through leafy arches and warm yellow lanterns. Everything was simple, sincere, just the way I wanted to live the next years. Dean arrived early in a charcoal suit, as meticulous as always. He brought a small wooden box placed neatly on the gift table. When I asked, he just smiled softly, wait until the end of the party to open it. My father was there too. I didn't invite him separately, but on the guest list, I hadn't crossed out his name. Tyler understood and he supported it. If he comes, let him be the one to listen, he said. When I stepped out into the garden to greet everyone, my eyes wandered and unconsciously landed on him standing in a distant corner near the maple trees. He wore a white shirt and light khaki pants, alone. He looked a little out of place, but no longer bitter or unsettled like before. He was silent, observing, and listening. The party began at 5 p.m. After dinner, as everyone moved to the tea and dessert area, Tyler stood up, raised his glass to thank everyone for coming, and then invited Dean to speak. Dean hesitated slightly. He had never liked being in front of a crowd, but finally stepped onto the small wooden platform next to the row of lights. His voice was deep and calm as always, but that day, every word made my chest tighten. I don't have a biological daughter. But over a dozen years ago, when I first met Melanie at my sister's Christmas party, I knew there was something in that girl's eyes I couldn't look away from. Not because she was radiant, but because she was quietly sad. Dean paused, his gaze on me. I do not replace anyone. I only do what a father should do, love and walk with his daughter into the greatest chapter of her life. No titles needed. No recognition necessary. I looked at Tyler. He held my hand tightly. Everyone was silent. No one laughed. No one interrupted. Just the gentle wind through the arches and the steady beat of my heart. Dean continued, family is not about always being right. Family is about staying even when we are wrong. And if someone asked me today what I am most proud of in my life, I would answer, being present in last year's wedding photo, walking Melanie down the aisle. When he stepped down, I couldn't hold back, rising to hug him tightly. It wasn't a polite hug, but the embrace of a child finding shelter after years adrift. I turned and saw my father still standing there. He didn't move closer. He didn't walk away. He only lightly touched his chest as if trying to hold on to something. After the party, I approached him. No words first. No plan. He looked at me and gave a slight nod. Dean was right, he whispered. I didn't know how to love. I thought staying silent was protection, favoritism was care. But it turns out, I only left you behind. I didn't respond immediately. I just stood there, arms crossed, listening to words he had never spoken in decades. I'm not asking for forgiveness, he continued, voice choking. I just want to learn again. From the start. If you allow me. I looked at him for a long moment. I didn't see a lost man, nor a father manipulated by Lena, but a person trying to be honest. Belatedly. But sincerely. I didn't say yes or no. I only said softly, start by listening. Not judging. Not interfering. And you don't need me to always be right. He nodded, eyes brimming. I will try. Every day. We didn't hug. We just walked along the tree-lined path as two people reacquainting from the beginning. No expectations. No pressure. Returning to the party table, Dean opened the small wooden box he brought. Inside was a miniature model of the wedding garden, with a tiny wooden couple standing in the aisle, and a second man holding the bride's hand, walking toward the light. I held the model, hands trembling slightly. Dean smiled. Tyler made the frame I just painted and added some details. I said nothing. I just embraced both men, the one I had chosen as a life partner and the one I called father, not by blood but because he knew how to stay. What do you think about my journey? Can a father who once lost his way truly learn to start over? Not by title but through patience and sincerity? And what really makes a family? Is it those who stay willing to hold your hand through the hardest paths? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave a comment below to share your feelings, or tell your own story about choices, forgiveness, and family. If this story touches something in your heart, a memory, a wound, or an unspoken hope, hit follow to not miss the next stories. We will share many more journeys, lingering pains, moments of renewal, and lessons that make you see family with new eyes. Because sometimes just one story is enough to begin healing.